Hello and welcome to Just Travel with Sandy. I'm Sandy. I'm a travel advisor, the author of the Travel Lounge Life, part memoir, part personal development, all around travel. And I help busy women who want more than just a trip. They're seeking luxury, peace, and meaningful growth through travel. My mission is to inspire you to transform your life through intentional, soulful journeys because it's not just about travel, it's about transformation. And in my years of experience, I know that planning can be super overwhelming. There's details, there's logistics, language barriers, and so many things that can stop even the most experienced travelers. And that's why this podcast gives you both structure and inspiration, clear, confident, and practical tips along real stories and mindset shifts. I've traveled to 37 countries and built my life around exploration. And what I've learned is this: it's never too late to see the world. So, whether you're someone who loves a plan, thrives on meaningful connection, or needs the facts before jumping in, this is the space for you. So, let's dive in. I'm super excited today to be joined by Julie Marx. She's the founder of China Expat Spouse. And I'll be linking all the information in the show notes because it's really interesting what Julie does. She and I met online in an expat group and we connected not just through our love for China, but we're actually from the same region in Germany, which is a small region. And we're working on something really special together. So, Julie, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself and what we have in store.
With pleasure. First of all, I love that you're pronouncing my name correctly because I am so used to people just, it's a name that exists in more than one language, right? So people say what they used to. But it's nice to hear the French pronunciation for once. So that's awesome. Thank you. Yes, my name is Julie Marie Marx, and I am a coach and I do personal or I help with personal development. I am the founder of China Expat Spouse, and the company does what the name implies, which is supporting the spouses of expats to China. And the way that I do that, or that we do that, is there's a program, or yeah, a program that I do, which is called the Thrive in China package. And it's more of a 360-degree program. So the core of it is coaching, where I help people find their place, their purpose, and their passion in China. And then I'm working with a lot of partners. So I'm working with a language school. So there's a language learning aspect to it. I'm working with a health and fitness coach because when you get to China and you get to try all the yummy food, people pack on. I know in the US you call it the freshman 15 and it should be the China 30, I think, because it's very easy to indulge. Also because everything is at your fingertips, right? In China, everything is just basically a 20-minute order on the phone away from you, no matter what you're ordering, really. So there's that. I'm also working with, I have a lot of clients who are planning to have a kid while they're in China, or who are finding out that they are going to be having a kid, even though they weren't planning on it. And so we're working with a doula as well for family planning and for everything that entails having a baby in China. I also work with a financial advisor. I also work with some relocation agents. So there's different aspects to it, with a concierge service for people who are saying, I'd like to get the day-to-day nuisances out of the way. And so I have a partner for that. And it's really about getting people completely settled and feeling completely at home in China within 90 days, which is very short and very powerful because you can just skip all the nonsense and just be and explore, because to me, it's the most fabulous country on earth.
I agree. And that actually ties into my next question. So, why China?
Oh,
How
why
did you get
not?
to China? It's not like it's
No,
Italy or
I know. It's
France or
and
why
I
China?
know, and I have a friend who's American who studied Russian, and I think her and I are really started bonding over our love for not very popular countries. Because she has to answer the same question I do. Why China? Like, why would anyone want to go to China? And I agree. If all you know about China is what you know from the media, then why would you? Because the way that the country is portrayed is usually, it goes from critical to extremely bad, and there's and all the shades of gray in between.
Yeah.
And but for me, it was travel. Travel is in my blood, and going to other countries is in my blood. So this started, and I know I've told you the story, and this would be way too long. We're not going to delve into that today, but it starts from my grandfather, basically, whose family left France to go to Morocco, and then he left his family and he went to France, and then the war came, and he met the love of his life, who was 20 years younger than him, and then their daughter, which is my mother, ran away from France to Germany, where she met my father. I started traveling at a very young age, and I grew up speaking German and French from my parents, and I also started learning English in fifth grade. And so I was always knew I wanted to travel. I always knew I wanted to discover the world, and languages were my pathway to that. And so when I did the equivalent of my high school diploma in Germany, I knew that I wanted to continue because I'd spent a year in the States when I was 16. So my English was fairly good at the time. And I was like, okay, I want to keep learning and speaking and writing French. And I want to learn and speak and write and keep learning English. But I didn't want to do that in Germany. I wanted out. I wanted to see something. And so I went to France to study. And the university I went to, they had a program called Languages Applied to Business, and there were different areas, and one of them so was either Asia Pacific or the Americas. And for the Americas, I would have had to pick up again on my Spanish that I'd had and learn Portuguese because that was their program. And for Asia, it was English plus something else, and the something else was either Indonesian of all languages or Mandarin
Interesting.
Chinese. And I was about 5 minutes away from choosing Indonesian. I'm very glad I didn't. I'm sure would have been fascinating, but
Absolutely.
it was like, okay, speaking to a fourth of the, like a quarter of the
Hmm.
world population, 5,000 years of history, all of that really meant that China was more my speed, I felt. And also the fact that Indonesia is a Muslim country, and then as a woman, there's also always that extra barrier, right? That extra layer of difficulty. So I was like, no, China sounds good. And we started, there were about 100 of us starting that bachelor's, and we graduated. There were 22 or 23 of us left after
Wow.
3 years. So it was tough,
Wow.
but I loved it. And I got to go to China in my third semester, and I got to go, no, my fourth semester and my sixth semester. So second and third year, both I got to go to China for half a year each, one semester, and I absolutely loved it. I love the food, of course. I love the fact that trying to speak Chinese really opened doors. People were so welcoming. They were so excited and proud to show me their country, to show me their culture. They really, making an effort really got me in with people. It was, you're still a foreigner because you look so different, but they are so welcoming. They're just lovely. It was unbelievable. For me, it was different from any other place I'd ever been, and I felt like I was home, even though I looked so different. And maybe because I looked so different, because in China, it's always from the get-go, people know you're not from there, right?
Yeah.
But then if you show appreciation, if you show interest, if you want to get to know them, they are the most amazing people you can ever imagine. So whenever there's a possibility to talk up this country of my heart, then I do. And
And
I've
I
built a
love
whole
that.
career about it.
And I
Love it.
love that so much because we've talked about this before too. China is a country that isn't one of the most popular, but my love for China, and this is what a lot of my book is about, that my father was born and raised in China because my grandparents fled Russia during the Russian Revolution. And he spent his first 19 years there. So we would travel there, and the same, the people, the culture, the food, the everything is so special. And this is something that a lot of people, unfortunately, are a little blind to. And also, like you said, what you hear on the news, what you hear out there, but just the culture alone and the history. And it's like one of my favorite places. And I don't have nearly the experience you do, but the little bit that I do, it's so in my blood. And like you, I was raised German English. And because we lived so close to the French border, the French came. So very similar. And I actually started in the Volkshochschule. I actually took a Mandarin Chinese course way back in the day, but everybody dropped out. There were literally 3 people left.
Yeah.
It started with 20. There were 3 people left, so they quit.
I
I
think your
get it.
ratio is close to mine, right? We start with 100 and we were 20
Exa
odd
Yeah.
people in the end. Yeah.
And it was just in a language course, and my son and I always feel like, because he studied Asian security studies when he went to university. So he spent a year at Fudan in Shanghai and started learning Chinese. And he and his partner, who they connected in Shanghai during this program, who are now engaged, they just got engaged. They sometimes at home still speak Mandarin to each other. Now, of course, it's on a Vic, her Chinese is definitely more advanced than Connor's because he wasn't there long enough. I send him things sometimes and he does get the gist of translating. So I love that. And that's what we connected over. And then we started talking because of course travel, another thing we both absolutely love. And we're like, we need a planet trip. We
Yes.
need to plan a trip to China. So we are planning a trip to China in probably September 2026 ish, around there. So talk to us just a little bit about, obviously, we don't have the itinerary hashed out, but a little bit about the area, because as the audience knows, most of my trips are off the beaten track. I don't want to go to just, even though it's fun, but we're going to do a very off the beaten track. And you're, of course, the expert on this. So talk a little bit about what we have in store.
Yes. How many hours do we have? Because once I start talking about it, it's really hard to shut me up. I
Oh,
love
gosh.
that you are as excited as I am about this trip because it's going to be fabulous. And every single person, so for us, a lot of our friends and family and just acquaintances, because so my husband and I have lived in China for just over 10 years. My China experience is 20 years in total, but in the first 10 years was back and forth and business trips and all of that good stuff. But then living there, really living there and immersed in for 10 years. And every single person who's come to see us before they came, they were like, China, I don't know, but you guys are there, so we'll just visit. And then by the time they leave, they're like, why didn't you guys insist we come earlier? We needed to see this earlier. And this is not once, this is time and again, because we are so used to getting those bombarded with those negative messages. And also because I feel like people have a lot of preconceived notions, and what they have is can be somewhat outdated, where they think everyone wears the Mao suit and it's bicycles everywhere, and which is that's just not the truth. But I think it's also because when you love a place, you are you're the best guide, right? And
Absolutely.
every time I plan an itinerary for, because people usually have a bucket list of where they want to go in China. So it's okay, I need to go to the Great Wall. And then I'm like, yeah, let's go to the Great Wall, but let's not go to Badaling, which is where Clinton and Bush and I don't think Trump has been, but we can make that happen with ChatGPT. But every time you have dignitaries coming, they go to this one stretch that I call the Disneyland of the Great Wall because it's very well maintained and it's very well accessible, and you have just rivers of people flowing through every single day. So I think I've been there once and I hated it. But where I usually take people is different stretches of the Great Wall. And because you and I both love tea, both love pandas, both love
Mhm.
more exotic places, let's say,
Yep.
we've decided that we're not going to go to Beijing. We're not going to go see the Forbidden City and the Great Wall in that stretch. We said, how can we access the Great Wall so that it's meaningful? And so on this trip, one of the highlights will be to go to the Great Wall, the most western part of the Great Wall. First of all, there is no one Great Wall. There were 16 different dynasties that were building this fortification. in different eras. And the Great Wall that most people look at nowadays is from the Ming Dynasty, so that's the second to last. So we're talking 14th to 17th century. They were conquered by the what then became the Qing Dynasty in 1644. So we're talking 13, I don't know when exactly they started redoing it, but yeah, 14th century to 17th. And even that is not one wall. It's different pieces of fortifications that always tie in with the natural landscape. So if you have two big mountains, they would build a wall in between those. And they would always use the materials that were there. And so the stretch of the big wall that we're going to visit is Jiayuguan, which is called the first fort under the heavens. So that's the westernmost part of the wall. And it's very different from, it's not like anything you have in your mind when you're thinking the Great Wall of China, but it is part of the Great Wall of China because it is in a desert-like area. And so it's a sandstone wall and it's part of it is an earthen rampart. And you have the sandstone that it's built with. So it blends in with the scenery. It's really quite magical. And there's a whole fort. They have a really awesome museum there that explains about the different kinds of wall and where they are and what they look like, the different eras that the fortification went through and all of that. So that would be the Great Wall. Another bucket list item that people have, and I know it's one of yours, is to actually see pandas and not in a zoo, but where they're
Mhm.
from. And so there again, there's the big panda base that everyone goes to in Chengdu, which is nice, but which is also super crowded. And then there is a different place outside. It's about an hour and a half outside of Chengdu. And it is beautiful. The landscape is beautiful. And we'll see whether we do the whole thing or whether we just do a part, but you could spend an entire day there and become a panda keeper, where you can clean the enclosures, you can prepare the food. They don't do because they are rehabilitating and they're helping pandas that were injured in the wild and things like that. And so there's no hugging the pandas or anything like that, but you're actually participating, right? You
Oh
can
my gosh.
become, I know, right?
Oh my God. You could just drop me off there and I'll be back and then pick me
That's what
up
I
on the way
figured.
back.
But you still want to come to the other places. There's a lot of
Yes.
other cool stuff too. But yeah,
Oh,
so this is where, yeah, obviously there's a lot of options, right? But that would be one to spend an entire day there and just immerse, right? And get to, because this is something that is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Because most people who go, they go to the main panda base where you can go and you can touch the panda or whatever, take a picture, and that's it. But
right.
because you have maybe 10 days and you also want to, it's really far if you're thinking Beijing to Chengdu is like a 4 hour flight, I think, 4 or 5 hour flight. So it's not like it's next door. And if you want to go to Beijing and you want to see the terracotta warriors and you want to see all of that, right? Most people don't go. They don't do that.
Yeah,
And they would definitely not spend an entire day. So this is
right.
where I'm like, yeah, we can be a little different.
We definitely can be a little different. And that's like traveling, flying from the East Coast to the West Coast of the United States.
Not quite, but yeah, close.
But it's China is it's my trip. On a side note, coming up to India, people are like, where are we going? India is a huge country, so you can't see it all. So there's a small
Yeah.
region, which is what we're doing. We're honing in,
Yeah.
and even that'll be
Well,
some
sort
travel.
of. So the
It's
idea,
not, yeah,
exactly. So the
yeah,
idea is to start in Shanghai, but not even look at Shanghai. People can do that by themselves because Shanghai is
right,
international and
yeah.
all of that. Or if you want, and if you beg us, maybe we'll add a couple of days before and after to show you a different kind of Shanghai if you're interested. But side note, but to say, okay, we're arriving in Shanghai because that's really accessible from the US, also accessible from Europe.
Sure.
And then we fly within China, and then we can start in Chengdu. We can see the pandas. And then Sichuan, Yunnan, and Gansu are the three provinces I want to focus on. There's enough in those three provinces to stay a couple of decades and still have things left over, but
I was going to
we'll
say we're
make
going to
it
do
in
a month
10.
trip.
No,
I'm
we'll
just
stick to
messing.
10 years. 10 years, I
10
was going to
years,
say 10 days.
10
We'll
days.
stick to 10 days.
That's wishful thinking.
Um, I know, right? But you need it. You really need it.
You do.
Also, there's always the opportunity to having this be the first in a series of many. It could be our first
Exactly.
trip, and then we can
E-
focus on other things the next trips.
exactly. So talk about, you mentioned Yunnan. So
Yeah,
talk about Yunnan.
is one, I say that about everything, but it's one of my favorites. It's it's the province with the largest number of ethnic minorities. So in China, we I always laugh when people are like, all Chinese are the same. No, but there are a lot of Chinese who look similar, and there are in total 54 ethnic minorities and the Han majority, right? So the Han Chinese are, they're over 90%, I forget numbers, but, and the 50 odd minorities are, some of them are tiny. So it's only a couple of villages that form their own distinct minority. And Yunnan province is the one with the largest number of different ethnic minorities. And so you have, many of them have very distinct dress. They have very distinct food. They have, their culture is completely different. They all have their own languages. And it's just fascinating to see. So it's as if you were saying that's like all of Europe, basically, right? If you're looking at the different languages, all of Europe,
Right.
within one province,
Yep.
one tiny little plot of land. That's one. So the ethnic minorities will definitely be a focus. Another focus is Yunnan has the best Chinese tea, and that's saying something. And they have different kinds of teas because everyone thinks, oh, in China it's all green tea. No, they have amazing black teas. They call them red teas, but
Yep.
in English, black tea. They have really good oolong teas, and
Oolong.
oolong is everything. Like that's a green tea is basically tea that's just dried, and then black tea is fermented, and then you have pu'er, which is fermented on speed. That's a different story for another day. And then you have oolong is where the fermentation process was kicked off, but stopped at a certain point. So it's, I think some people call it yellow tea in the English speaking world. And you also have white tea, which is yet another kind. There's
Mhm.
amazing different teas. And what I find fascinating is that it's technically it's the same plant. It's not like with wine where you have red grapes and white grapes, but it's the same thing, but the way that you deal with it makes it into a vastly different culinary experience. And also, it's depending, that's one thing, how you treat it, but then also the soil, the altitude, the water that they use, everything. And some of these places, their tea bushes are hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Yep.
So you may be drinking something from a bush that's 400 years old, which I find mind blowing.
My son actually he's big into coffee, but he also got big into tea. And when he still lived in New York, he actually, there was one tea guy and he would bring Connor very small batches of like 100, 200, 300-year-old tea, and Connor would make, and it's so delicious.
Yeah.
It's not like Lipton's tea bag.
The thing is, also, there's a whole art around it, right? The tea ceremony, and that's one thing. I am, I think I just care about the flavor too much and I care about the history of it too much. That for me, the tea ceremony is lovely, and I'm sure we can work one in. But for me, what's more exciting is to see the different kinds, like how different flavors can be with basically the same raw materials.
Yeah.
And there it starts from different teas are brewed with different temperature water. Some tea is brewed at 80 degrees Celsius,
Mhm.
is brewed at 100.
Mhm.
And also, I know that in the West, most people put a tea bag in, they'll drown it in water, they'll let it sit, and then they take the tea bag out and throw it away. And in China, that's the very worst thing you could do because what you do with the first brew is you clean your cups.
Mhm.
So the first brew of any tea is thrown away.
Okay.
And then you drink the second brew to, depends on the tea. Some teas up to 8 brews, some like 10 to 15. And pu'er, you can drink all day. You drink the same tea all day. But every time you brew it, it has a different flavor. Like it just, I'm not a wine drinker, but think wine snobs 10 times, 10x, because
Right.
every single brew has a different flavor to it. And there are some black teas, for instance, that have this like coffee and gingerbread type of it's amazing. It's just really cool.
It is. It's the first time I experienced it. I was like, it's mind blowing to think that tea can be so different because in America or in the UK, it's English tea, it's Earl Grey, it's all these, which really isn't tea. It is, but it's
They're
just
good, they're
different.
fine. But yes, and
It's
it's a different mindset to it. And also tea in China is for many people, it can be an investment. Like
Mhm.
you'll buy, especially with here we're talking pour, which is depending, there's different kinds, but there's one kind that where basically the fermentation process is kicked off and then it keeps fermenting. And
Mm,
that's the kind that you can keep up to 100 years. And so
that's
there are
amazing.
people who buy, they're sold in what they call bian, in cakes. So
Mm,
it's like a pressed slab
right.
about yay big,
Hmm.
357 grams, because why make it logical? And so you buy a cake, and if it's a cake of tea of a very old bush, a very good year, done by a person who really knows what they're doing, then the value can not just double or triple, it can go up by 100 times in 20 years. So
Yeah.
all you need to do is keep in optimal conditions, and then your children or your children's children will be able to sell it within China, because outside of China, no one will pay the prices, but within China and make a chunk of money off it.
It's like you mentioned, and I'm not really a drinker, period, but it's like wines, right? It's a very similar process, which is so fascinating. And to see that firsthand, I've never been to Yunnan, so I'm really looking forward to experiencing that. And like you said, yeah, the tea ceremony it's great, but just experiencing the flavors and all that. So while we're on the subject of flavors, talk a little bit about food specialities in Yunnan or in what?
It's in China. So China in general has 8 big cuisines, but then within each cuisine you have many different varieties. And again, for Yunnan, what's exciting is that you have the ethnic minorities that bring in something completely different. Because then, like Thai cuisine, for instance, it has nothing to do with what you picture in your head as Chinese food. And that's the other thing. I think it's hilarious that Chinese food in each country outside of China is completely different. You
It's
have in I mean I've had it I think I've had Chinese food in pretty much every single country I've been to, just because it's fun to have Chinese
uh-huh.
food wherever
I
I
do the
go.
same. I do the same.
And then be like, yeah, it's interesting, it's different, but it's still not Chinese food. Like it's yes.
It's not bad,
So
but it's not really Chinese.
and this
Yeah.
is my best friend is Sri Lankan, and so every time I'm in Sri Lanka, she's Julie, we're gonna have to go and have Chinese food. I say, yeah, I know. And this is me coming from China to visit her in Sri Lanka, and we're going to have Chinese food because Sri Lankan Chinese food, it's awesome. It's not Chinese, but it's awesome.
Oh,
So, yes, what's interesting there is that you can try with every minority that you come in contact with. Anyway, in China, travel is as much about the food as it is about anything else. And that's how the Chinese travel also. They tell you where they went and what they ate, and they will bring specialties back. So this is like the one thing that people they don't they now there's other souvenir type things, but even with that, the most important thing is that you bring some food back for the people back home.
that's amazing. Food. And it's so funny that you say that though about the Chinese food because when I went to Germany with some of the people from America on one of the trips, we went to a Chinese restaurant and they said, this isn't bad, but it's not like the Chinese food we get in wherever, Charlotte, I think, North Carolina or whatever. And then when we were in Ireland, they're like, a couple of the people were the same. They're like, we need to go have Chinese food here just to see what it's like. And it wasn't bad, but again, it wasn't,
It was
it's
different.
so
Yes,
funny.
and it's when I was an exchange student in the US when I was 16, And that was one of the culture shocks for me was having Chinese food there because I was like, crab cakes. What are those? What is that? General whatever's chicken? No,
Yeah,
no, that doesn't seem
yeah, I think
General
General
So
Chow or
or
something.
something. Yeah, I don't know.
It's
And I was
funny.
like, no, we do sweet and sour duck, which also they don't do in China, but they do in Germany.
They
So
didn't do I know. It's so funny. I know. It's just really interesting. Everybody's little nuances and stuff. So to experience real authentic Chinese food will be
well,
uh,
and yeah, and that's the thing. You can, no matter where in China you are, you can get some of the major cuisines. And but then it's also fun to, of course, have the thing that they
the
do there.
regional.
And it's you with German roots and all, you will understand how crazy people can get about certain foods, right?
Yes.
Asparagus season in Germany.
Yes.
And so they do the same thing in China where it's, oh, this is the specialty and you're here at just the right time. So it's like this one tree that will grow only in that area, that will only, like, the leaves will only be at peak whatever in that particular week or month. And
Right.
that's when everyone goes to have that particular
Yep.
dish.
Yep.
Now, Yunnan is really famed for their mushrooms. So you have different kinds of mushrooms, and those you can dry so you can have them year round. But still,
Mhm.
field stuff, you want to be, and in September, we might actually be there for mushroom season. So that could be fun.
Nice. That could be fun. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love the little cultural nuances. And I know this could go on forever, but
Yeah. How much longer do we
how
have? Because
so those are the some of the highlights, but we talked about, and I'm trying to remember, we talked about something else and I'm literally drawing a blank, but what else did we have in store?
Ah, so much. And that's where for me, the problem is not coming up with enough things to do. It's with paring down the itinerary
Right.
so that we're not
Doable.
hopping. We don't want to do two or three things in a
No,
day. We want to
no.
really immerse. We want to really
Be
be there.
intentional.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But one thing that I don't think we can afford to miss is there's the Mogao Caves. And I think that's what you're
That's
alluding
right. That's
to, right?
exactly what I was. Yes, exactly. Because yeah.
And it's
I-
gotten more popular recently, so we'll have to see whether it makes sense to go or not, because they have been closing more and more of the caves. So it's a whole cliff face full of little caves that have drawings and paintings, not drawings, paintings on the inside of the caves. And those are all Buddhist paintings from different centuries from with different styles. And this is because Dunhuang is on the Silk Road. And this is where influences from the West and influences from the East were in one place. And what's so special about Dunhuang and about the Mogao caves is that there was one cave that was like that they discovered. I think I want to say it was at some point in the 90s. And it was basically like it was sealed off. Somebody by accident opened that thing and they discovered lots and lots of scrolls. And those scrolls changed the history of a lot of different disciplines because there were scrolls that were brought in from, so a lot of them were religious scrolls, so Buddhist scrolls, but you also had scrolls that came in from the Middle East, that came in from Europe, that came in from all different places, and that were really well preserved and that had been lost in different parts of the world. And so some of those scrolls were basically rewriting the history of mathematics, the history of music, the history of astronomy, of all different disciplines, because people were aware that what they thought was invented much later had existed prior to this. And there's an amazing online, they have an online walkthrough that where they've put a lot of the scrolls, digitalized the scrolls so that people have access to them. And to me, I love that place because it shows collaboration by people in the sciences. Because it's by putting all of this online, basically they open it up to everyone, right? They open it up to anyone who has internet access. And people who are into these like super niche areas, they get access to that information, which to me, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it because
Yeah.
to me, that's the best of humanity is when we work together.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I was saying. The connection, the community, the collaboration, which is not everybody keeping it for themselves. I love that. Absolutely. And you remembered correctly because we had a call the other day and I was like, oh my God, oh my God. But like you also mentioned, we want to do and we want to give people the best of the best, but we also want to keep it intentional and not just run from A to B to C because we can always go back. Beautiful
That is
thing.
my secret plan. My secret master plan is to fix people up and be like, okay, this is the gateway drug. We're going to do this one. And then next year and the year after and the year after, I have
Exactly.
more.
Exactly. Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, Julie speaks the language, so we don't have to worry about that. Because I know that's a factor for a lot of people when they go to a new place. It's one thing if you're going to Ireland or to the England or even Germany, going to a place like China, India, whatever, it's a language barrier. So we'll have the perfect guide with us who
Well,
speaks the
India
language.
is pretty good because in India, chances are you'll find somebody who speaks English.
Well, true, but still, it is a barrier for people, though.
Yeah,
People are, and that's what I hear about my upcoming trip is we'll be fine. We'll be totally fine. But yes, you're absolutely right, especially with the history and Commonwealth and all that.
yeah.
Absolutely. But
But
that's
yes,
awesome.
so Chinese, and that's the thing is if you have access to the language, then you experience things in a very different way. Because even if you want to Google things before you go, there isn't that much information actually, because it's not because of that language barrier. And because of course the Chinese internet is a different internet from the one
Yes.
that the rest of the world sees. So
That's
yeah.
very true. It'll be very special. So stay tuned because we are going to be over the next not too long, we're going to be hashing everything out and I will announce it and we'll pick the exact dates. And so before we wrap it up, because this could go on forever and I wouldn't mind that, but you know, what is one thing that you would like to say or a couple things that you'd like to say to wrap it up about the trip, about China, about anything?
I'm finding it really hard to keep it to a couple of things. But my one thing I'd like to say is if people are interested, I would be more than happy to come on again and for us to talk about it. And also, if there's interest for people to co-create the itinerary. If people are saying we're interested in more the foodie experience, or we're interested more in the historic experience, or we want more nature, or we want more this, we want more that, because that's another thing. Like I'm thinking the Rainbow Mountains, we can't really skip the Rainbow Mountains, but it's yeah, so it's going to be tough to decide on where to focus. So if people listen to this or watch this and are like, yeah, that sounds good, but I want to have more say, tell us. Tell
Yes,
us what you're
I like
interested
that.
in, what this
Hmm.
first trip should
Exactly.
focus on, so that we can make it the best possible version for people who want to come.
Absolutely. I love that. That's the best. And we'll definitely, as we get, not as we get closer, but as we nail it down or get more firm at what we want to do, then we can come on again and say, this is what we want. Is this okay? Do you want anything else? And hey, we're planning on around 10 days. If people want a little longer, we'll see. It's a little tougher with the American market because they don't get as much vacation time. However, you just never know. It can be that special thing. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that idea.
And also, and we talked about this last time, but there's also the possibility of saying, okay, this is our core trip. And then if there are people who are interested in seeing a different side of Shanghai, for instance, that's easily doable, right? Where you
Yeah.
can see the Shanghai of the 20s and 30s. You
Hmm.
can see like Art Deco Shanghai, where you can see there's so many things. There's I spoke to you about that last time, the Jewish Museum of Shanghai,
Yes.
which is so cool. Just places that is not, let's go look at the skyscrapers at night. Everyone
Right.
can do that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
get a little bit more out of this underestimated city, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is. And people don't know what they don't know. And like you said, they want to maybe go to Shanghai and then they see what's in the guides and they see what they can find because they don't have the access to all the information and the wealth of knowledge that you have. You're a secret little treasure here that I'm so glad and so grateful that I found you. Or that we connected. And it's funny with the whole German connection, then China, and it's like it all came together and the love for travel. So I'm really excited. I am really excited about this.
As am I. And I think in order to spare everyone's ears, we should probably leave it at that. But yes, there's
Absolutely.
interest. If there's interest, we can definitely do a second installment, talk a
Absolutely.
little bit more about this.
So, thank you everybody for listening to this podcast and all the great information. And just know that we will be back and we really want to bring intentional travel to you. So, whether you love structure or meaningful connection and really want to do something off the beaten track, learn something new, this is the place for you. So, until next time, keep dreaming, exploring, and remember every journey starts with a single step. Thank you so much, Julie. And we will be back for sure.